If you thrift to resell, then you need to know which items will really sell and which items will just sit on the shelves collecting dust. So today I'm breaking down the top 10 thrift store finds that sell quickly and for a good profit. These are the home decor pieces that buyers are actually looking for right now. Plus, I'll show you how I upcycled these pieces to boost my profit margin. You'll see what to thrift, what to leave behind, and how to make the most money so that you have more to spend on your next thrift store trip. Wall shelves and sconces are the kind of wall decor that buyers love because they do double duty. They're useful, but they also add personality to a space. These plain brown shelves will sell eventually, but if you add vintage-inspired details like floral motifs, soft patinas, or gilding, they will sell much faster. Buyers today are looking for charm and character, not just function, so a little embellishment can make all the difference. On camera, these shelves look like wood, but they're actually resin. So to give them a fresh look, I spray painted them black. Then I used a small artist brush to apply gold rub and buff to highlight some of the edges. With just those few changes, they were already more marketable. But I wanted to take it a step further and add a floral embellishment. I chose two identical IOD rub-on transfers, but I applied them in different orientations so that they looked slightly different. Then I decided to gild the top of the shelf too. I prefer applying rub and buff with my finger when I have a large area to cover. Most resellers aim to make at least 3 times what they paid for an item, and sometimes more if it's been upcycled and styled well. I paid $5 for this pair of shelves, and they should sell easily for $30, which is 6 times the original cost. I also thrifted a simple wall plate rack, another example of functional wall decor. Although metal decor usually sells well, this rack had dated red highlights, so I brushed black rub and buff over it to give it the appearance of iron. This will help it to sell, but we also need to stage it with a cute plate. Since flower designs are so popular right now, I applied a rose rub-on transfer that complemented the plate's red border. I distressed the transfer with fine sandpaper so that it would look as old as the plate. Although you could sell these separately, I would probably sell them as a set for the greatest profit margin. Small accent tables or stools are quick sellers due to their size and versatility. Buyers today want solid wood furniture in natural tones, but painted pieces still sell too. However, overly rustic, distressed, or shabby chic items are no longer selling well. Because the wood on this table was thin and in poor condition, I decided to paint it rather than trying to refinish it. I chose a dark green spray paint because greens and warm whites are the top selling colors this year. This table was really plain and simple, so I knew it needed something eye-catching if I wanted to get a good return on it. I found an old IKEA Botanical poster and decided to adhere it right to the tabletop. When adhering thin paper to wood, I use Mod Podge, But this poster was thick and it would likely bubble with a water-based product like Mod Podge. So I used a spray adhesive, which is solvent-based and therefore less likely to wrinkle or bubble. Evenly spray the back of the poster with the spray adhesive. Wait about 30 seconds and place it on the table. Use a brayer in all directions to assure good adhesion. To remove the excess poster, I cut along the table edges with a utility knife. Then I smoothed out the paper edges with a sanding block to give it a more natural appearance. I let the spray adhesive dry overnight. The next day, I sealed the poster with spray polyurethane. Again, to avoid bubbles, you don't want to use a water-based sealer. Apply the clear coat in 4 to 5 separate light coats. Even with the addition of the poster, I thought the table was still looking pretty plain. So I grabbed my paint pens and began drawing lines and rectangles on the legs and sides. If you're worried about getting perfectly straight lines, you can use a ruler, but I don't care if it's perfect. I want it to look hand painted. I waited about 15 minutes to make sure the paint was dry and wouldn't smudge, and then I brushed dark wax over the table to give it an aged appearance, but I didn't wax over the poster. And finally, I just used a cloth to wipe off the excess wax. One of the fastest selling categories this year is decorative storage, pieces that help organize a space but still look great. This little trunk is a perfect example of a statement piece that doubles as storage. And something else that is hot right now is gilded or gold accented decor. So to make this little trunk really stand out, I brushed gold rub and buff along the edges and over the hardware. I could have stopped there, but I wanted to amp it up even more. I tried adhering a floral rub-on transfer to the lid, but it didn't want to stick at all. So I brushed matte Mod Podge over the areas where I wanted to place the transfers, let it dry, and tried again. And that did the trick. This time, the transfers adhered perfectly. In fact, they looked too perfect, so I lightly rubbed over them with sandpaper. Due to the raised texture of the trunk, the sandpaper distressed the transfers a little more than I expected, but I still like how they turned out. To age it further, I brushed dark wax over the transfers, lightly dabbing off the excess with a rag. And for a final embellishment, I found a tassel in my stash and tied it to the latch. Would this trunk have sold in its original condition? Probably. But now it looks vintage and unique, so it will sell faster and for more money. Like other decor, today's buyers want clocks that feel unique or special and make a statement. Oversized wall clocks, sculptural designs, and vintage or artistic styles are especially popular. I thrifted a decorative wall clock for only $3, but the decorative part definitely needed an update. I was able to easily detach the clock box from the frame so that I could remove the decorative resin pieces. I'll save the tiny books and glasses. You never know, they might be perfect in another setting. I wanted the decor in the clock to be interchangeable, so I popped out the glass from the frame. To give the clock a more vintage appearance, I painted the frame and the box with black chalk paint. Black is another paint color that is selling well this year. Once the paint was dry, I covered the back wall of the box with a scrap of leftover peel and stick wallpaper. Just cut the wallpaper a little larger than you need, stick it in place, and then use a utility knife to clean up the edges. I reattached the frame and realized that I hadn't painted the back. If the back looks sloppy, it might cost you a sale. To give the clock a more vintage appearance, I brushed on a thick coat of water-based antiquing wax, and I also brushed it over the white clock face. Then I just lightly dabbed off the excess. Be sure to stage the clock with a small vase or plant on the shelf so buyers can visualize the possibilities. Metals like brass, silver, and copper are strong sellers because today's buyers want pieces that feel substantial and well made and will add character to their homes. I thrifted this large floral arrangement for $5, mostly because I loved the metal urn they were in. I pulled out all of the flowers and sorted them into like piles to use in future projects. To remove the hot glue from the urn, I put it in my freezer for an hour so the globs of glue would scrape off easier. Then I used my heat gun to melt any remaining glue and wipe it off. Like the plate rack from earlier in the video, the urn's metal had that Tuscan style red hue that was popular in the early 2000s. So once again, it was Rub and Buff to the rescue. I used black, but gold would also look great. Next, I want to create some items I can use to stage the urn. Staging helps customers imagine how they could use the piece in their own homes, turning a possible purchase into a must-have. I grabbed a bird nest from my stash and added a piece of styrofoam that came out of the urn. Then I added all the silk fern leaves from the bouquet. Vintage book bundles are flying off the shelves right now because they offer shoppers the convenience of a themed set at a bargain price. Tie them together with twine, ribbon, or lace and use them to stage other merchandise. Wicker, rattan, and seagrass baskets are an easy sell, especially if styled with blankets, flowers, or a potted plant. I used the yellow flowers that basically came free with the metal urn. Buyers are willing to spend more on a finished, thoughtfully combined piece that feels unique and ready to enjoy instead of two unrelated items that still need work or vision to be useful. I often hear resellers say that lamps don't sell for them, but maybe they're not selling the right kind of lamps because buyers are snagging up both vintage and unique statement lamps. When I bought this orange lamp, I thought it was ceramic, but it's actually clear glass that has been painted on the inside. I think it's a pretty lamp, but right now, orange is not a popular color, so I'm going to paint it. I could have taped off the base first, but if you saw my recent lamp video, you know it's very easy to take a lamp apart. I took both the base and the body of the lamp outside. First, I cleaned them with liquid sandpaper, and then I gave them 2 light coats of Zinsser Bullseye Primer. This is the best spray primer on the market, in my opinion. It sticks to almost anything, even glossy finishes, laminate, and glass. The lamp base is plastic, so to make it look more like metal, I painted it with black spray paint. I had this idea to make the lamp look like Wedgwood blue jasper ware, a classic English stoneware. So the first task was painting the lamp with a soft blue chalk paint. I applied 3 light coats for full coverage. To create the white applique design, I'm going to use an IOD cherry blossom mold and air dry clay. To begin, dust your mold with cornstarch to keep the clay from sticking. Then press the clay into the shapes using your fingers to push off any excess clay and create clean edges. I find it's easier if I just make a couple at a time. Don't let the appliques dry in the mold. You want them to form to the shape of the lamp, so take them out right away. Use E6000 or Gorilla Glue for the best adhesion, applying a generous amount to the back of each applique and then placing it on the lamp. If some of the pieces break, you can easily join them back together on the lamp. Once you're happy with your design, let the clay dry for at least 48 hours. Although the adhesive dried clear, I could see where it had seeped out from under the appliques. So I carefully painted over the dried glue with the blue chalk paint. Once everything was thoroughly dry, I reassembled the lamp. Place the lamp pipe in the body with the socket base on top. Run the bottom of the pipe through the base and tighten the nut, which will secure the base to the lamp. Run the cord back through the pipe and wrap the wires around the screws and tighten them. Slip on the socket cover and push it into its base. To seal the lamp, use a clear acrylic spray like Rust-Oleum's Ultra Cover or Krylon's Crystal Clear. These products dry to a durable film that's non-yellowing and flexible enough to allow for the tiny expansion or contraction of the clay. I thrifted this mid-century mirror for just $8. It is plastic, but I love the oval shape. And with some fresh paint, I think we can make it look like wood. After removing the mirror, I sprayed the frame with green spray paint. I let the paint dry overnight, and the next day I brushed on black wax, making sure to get into all the little grooves of the design. Then I wiped off the excess. I put the mirror back together and added some heavy-duty hanging wire. So you'll have to let me know what you think. Would you guess that it's painted plastic, or do you think it looks like wood now? Buyers are still loving botanical decor. Dried and pressed flowers, vintage botanical prints, and nature-inspired elements all tap into people's ongoing desire to feel connected to nature. Vintage jewelry boxes usually sell well on their own, but if you repurpose them as a botanical display, they will likely fly off the shelves. Remove the lining and any parts designed to hold jewelry, so you're left with an empty box. Then remove any residual glue as best you can. I decided I wanted to use spray paint this time, so I went ahead and removed the glass and small hardware. Once again, I chose green, a color that sells especially well in the spring and summer months. Once the paint was dry, I chose a botanical print peel and stick wallpaper left over from another project to cover the inside of the box. This will hide the mirror and any remaining glue or paper. I cut 3 pieces slightly larger than I needed, then used a utility knife to cut off any extra wallpaper along the edges. You could stage it with a small faux plant or flowers inside, but I recently found an old bird's nest in my yard and wanted to display that. A viewer recently told me that to kill off any tiny bugs in a bird nest, put it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it for 24 hours. Take it out, wait 24 hours, then refreeze it for another 24 hours. To display the nest, I added a few sticks from my yard to create a natural looking environment, and then I hot glued the nest to the sticks. I also added some faux bird eggs and a little moss and greenery around the base of the sticks. I wanted the focus to be on the nest, so I didn't add a fake bird. Instead, I just glued a paper butterfly to one of the sticks. Then I was ready to reassemble the jewelry box. I put back all of the small parts except for the carousel necklace rack. Upcycling this jewelry box cost virtually nothing, so I only have $3 invested in it. So tell me, what do you think would be a fair resale price? Frames, with or without art, are almost always a good seller, but only if you know what frame styles are selling. Right now, vintage, ornate, gilded, or brass frames are on fire, but silver, clear, and overly distressed frames are not. To turn this inexpensive thrift store frame into something more likely to sell, I first need to get rid of the silver highlights. So I painted it with 2 coats of black chalk paint. Gilding it with gold rub and buff would look great, but I wanted to show you another option. White wax over black painted details also creates an aged patina that looks authentically vintage. This frame will now sell, but you know what I'm going to say. If you take the extra step to print out an image in the public domain that complements the frame, it will sell faster and for more money. I want to thank all the viewers who commented on what is selling and not selling for them. And I want to share some of the items they mentioned that I wasn't able to include today. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you'd like some tips on staging a booth, here's a video you may enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you next week.